A man who isolates himself seeks his own desire and rages against all wise judgment. A fool has no delight in understanding, but in expressing his own heart. When the wicked comes, contempt comes also, and with dishonor comes reproach. The words of a man's mouth are deep waters. The wellspring of wisdom is a flowing brook. It is not good to show partiality to the wicked or overthrow the righteous in judgment. A fool's lips enter into contention, and his mouth calls for blows. A fool's mouth is his destruction, and his lips are a snare to his soul. The words of a talebearer are like tasty trifles. They go down into the inmost body. He who is slothful in his work is a brother to him who is a great destroyer. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run into it and are safe.
Well, good morning. Let me try that again. That was pretty weak. Good morning. It's a rainy day outside. I know that a lot of you are maybe a little sleepy, but we're glad that you're here, glad that you've made the choice to be with us. You'll notice a few empty spots. We do have some people traveling. We have a group that has gone over to the Inspire Youth Camp in Montgomery. We have a group that will be leaving today to head over to Backwoods Camp. If you're a part of that group, you need to be here by 1 o'clock. So that you can get on the road. So that group will be going to Backwoods. We have a lot of people traveling for vacation and some sickness as well. So I want to remember all those people that aren't with us today. But it's important that you are with us today. And we're glad that you're here, particularly for the discussion that we're going to have today. And we're continuing our Families in Crisis series. I appreciated very much the lesson that Butch delivered last week about parenting, and even more so, the hearts that were touched and responded to that. And I know that every one of us want to ensure that the next generation of God's people are brought up in the right way. So I appreciate that, and we're going to talk a little more about that today in the midst of this discussion. Families in crisis. What is it that is causing the most trouble in our time? 2017, what is causing division and strife among the family? We could probably name a lot of things. We could probably come up with a very long list of struggles, things that the family's going through and temptations that we face. But chief among those is what we're going to talk about this morning: technology and social media. And this is not going to be the bash technology lesson. Now, I've heard a lot of those where people stand up and they say, oh, computers are the devil and throw your smartphones away. And I'm not going to say any of that. But I think it's important that we learn to navigate the things that we have at our disposal so that they can become tools rather than hindrances to us. I read some interesting statistics this week. In the year 2005, which is 12 years ago, and I shared this with our elders this morning, 5% of people had a social media profile. 5%. In 2017, that number is 70%. So in the past 12 years, we've gone from a 5% usage of social media to 70%. That means 7 in every 10 people are active on social media. So I thought maybe we'd test that out. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to raise your hand up high and leave it up if you have at least one social media profile, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it might be. Raise your hand up high. Okay, now in addition to that, leave those up. Leave them up, leave them up. Now, even if you don't have social media, if you have a smartphone or a computer in your house, you raise your hand as well. Now I want you to look around. Leave your hands up and look around. So this lesson, you can put them down, applies to each and every one of us, almost. Because maybe we're not on social media, but we have smartphones and we have computers and we have access to the things out there that are in the world that are causing so much trouble. And I want to start this morning by looking at an illustration. There was a famous photographer a couple years ago named Eric Pickersgill. And he took a bunch of different pictures. He was inspired by a cafe that he went in New York, and he saw these people, and they were eating dinner together, but they were just looking at their phones. And he did this exhibit called Removed, and I want to show you a few of the pictures from that, assuming that this clicker will do what it's supposed to. Here you see a family, and this is kind of dark. Can y'all dim these front lights? maybe this section here too. There we go. You can see this family here. They're sitting around a table, and all of them are on smartphones, but they took them out, and you see how strange and bizarre that looks. Here, a mother spending quality time with her daughter. One's on a phone and one's on a tablet, not even looking or making contact with each other. And they're engaged with what's going on that phone and that tablet, but no interaction with each other. You know, I thought that had to be a joke, but unfortunately it's not. A married couple on the day of their wedding, still in their clothes, checking their smartphones, updating their status to say married on Facebook. 3 brothers sitting on the couch, just on tablets. Maybe wonder, where are mom and dad when this is going on? We say, well, it's just young people. Well, that's not true. Here's 2 people that are a little more seasoned in their age, and one sitting in a recliner looking at a device, the other on the couch looking at something. And this next one's the one that really broke my heart the most. It's a barbecue outside, and dad's on the grill looking at his phone. Mom's sitting on the tailgate of the truck looking at her phone. And here's this little boy. Nobody's paying attention to him. Never mind the fact it looks like he's holding an axe. Or, Junior, what's that thing, a go devil that y'all call it up here, that he's holding and splitting wood with? He's got a sharp object in his hand, but he's just begging for mom or for dad to pay attention to him, and he's standing there all alone. You bring those lights back up. This, folks, is the world that we're living in now. We are constantly distracted by these things. I want to talk about, as it relates to technology for just a minute, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good about technology is it has improved the world in a lot of ways. You can go to our website, lajchurchofchrist.com or .org. Both of them will take you to the same place, and you can hear sermons. You can keep up with what's going on. You can see the schedule of events. You can track what's going on with the church. You can see our social media feed right there on the homepage if you go look at it. We have one of the best, most well-maintained websites. I'm very thankful to our guys that work in the technology area that keep that so up to date. Technology is great. It's made the world a smaller place. Dorian Flynn, who's a good friend of mine and a missionary in Zimbabwe and other parts of southern Africa, he says that you can go to these villages and they literally don't have clean running water. But at the center of every one of those villages now is what they call the internet cafe, where you can go and it's a mobile hotspot. And so I can talk to him when he's in the African bush, just like I would if I was talking to one of you here in North Georgia. It's made the world a place where we can stay in touch with each other. We can talk to each other. Carla's brother, as most of you know, is stationed right now over in South Korea, so we can pull up Skype. You don't even have to download Skype now. You can do it on Facebook Live or a Snapchat video, and we can see our niece and nephew and our family just at the click of a button. I think technology's done some wonderful things. It certainly made my job easier as it relates to typing up sermons and being able to do things that communicate God's word to the rest of the world. We have a tremendous opportunity to evangelize. But just like our money and our time and our other resources, we've got to learn to be better stewards of what we've been given. And I want you to hold on to that word. We need to be good stewards of the technology that God has given us. So that's the good. Well, what about the bad? Technology is a major distraction from important things. The average person, these are as of 2016, the average person spends 3.5 hours a day on social media. 3.5 hours a day on social media. That's not somebody that's addicted to their phone. There's the average person in the United States. 3.5 hours. And here's one. Many teenagers spend up to 9 hours a day on social media. 9 hours every day. Technology is bad, not because of anything that's done on it, just of the fact that it takes us away from what's most important in our lives. We need to learn to spend time doing other things. And then there's the ugly. 2011, Great Britain reported divorce statistics. In those statistics, 1 in every 5 citizens of Great Britain that divorced listed Facebook as the major cause of their separation. 1 in every 5 couples divorced because of something that happened on social media. In the United States last year, 20% of every person surveyed admitted to having an online affair. 1 in 5 people in the country that you and I live in admitted that they have had an online affair. And that's just the people that admitted it. 40%, that's creeping eerily close to half. 40% of all people caught having an affair said the relationship began online. In a world where it's easy to be very dishonest and it's a lot harder to keep up with your footsteps, the very ugly in our nature comes out. So technology has some good, it has some bad, and unfortunately it's got some ugly. I want you to turn back over to Proverbs 18 with me, the passage that Quinn read for us just a minute ago. I was looking at some stuff in preparation for this, and Wes McAdams, who writes for Radically Christian, and most of you read his stuff. He's a really good guy, writer out in Texas, a good friend to all of us in the blogging world. And he's got a very long list of things that are taken out from this passage. There were a few that were pretty poignant that I want to share with you before we move on. Proverbs 18, just some verses to consider when it comes to navigating technology and social media. Proverbs 18, starting in verse 1, says, "A man who isolates himself seeks his own desire. He rages against all wise judgment." The ESV says he breaks out against sound judgment. Sometimes it's very easy for us to get trapped in this world. I'll admit this to you. I don't mind making fun of myself. That every now and then, I use Snapchat a lot to keep up with the kids and everything. And in Snapchat, you take a lot of selfies. So I will every now and then, as a grown 31-year-old man, see myself taking a selfie and see somebody else looking at me pretty strange and realize that I look pretty dumb doing that. But in that world that we live in, that's normal. Sometimes we have a tendency to isolate ourselves and not use sound judgment as it relates to that world. Verse 2, "A fool has no delight in understanding, but in expressing his own heart." I kind of like this translation better. "A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion." Sometimes we don't think about things before we say them, and once we send them out into that world, we can't take them back. Verse 4 of Proverbs 18, "The words of a man's mouth are deep waters. The fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook." Or the New King James says, "The words of a man's mouth are deep waters. The wellspring of wisdom is a flowing brook." We want to be promoting good, positive, wise things using the influence that we have. Down to verse 9 of Proverbs 18. "Whoever is slack in his work is a brother to him who destroys. Or he who is slothful in his work is a brother to him who is a great destroyer." When it distracts us from other things that we ought to be doing, social media can cause great damage and ruin productivity. And then down in verse 13, this is an important one. "If one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame. Or he who answers a matter before he hears it, it is folly and shame to him." This is never more true than it relates to us expressing our own political opinions or our own opinions on issues in the news. Sometimes we say things before we have the full story, and they're things that we ought not to repeat. Those are just a few things taken from this one passage that can help us think about the way that we ought to do those things. But for our purposes this morning, in the few minutes that we have left, I want us to think about 4 things. 4 things to remember as we learn to use technology and social media in the right way. And this is the very practical part. This is the nuts and bolts. Especially if you're a parent with children that have access to computers and smartphones and tablets, and if you're an adult that uses those things, please listen to this. If you're sleepy or whatever else is going on, I need you to wake up and listen to this. This is so important. The first thing, we've got to remember not to say too much. 4 things to remember. Number 1, remember not to say too much. Proverbs 29, verse 11. One of the most wisdom-filled verses in Scripture. Proverbs 29, 11. Proverbs 29, 11. A fool vents all his feelings, but a wise man holds them back. A fool vents all his feelings, but a wise man holds them back. I know it's happened to you because it's happened to me. You go through the drive-thru, and you get really poor service. And the first thing you do while you're driving is you open up that Facebook app on your smartphone. McDonald's is the nastiest, most gross food. Their French fries are plastic. Their burgers aren't real meat. It's the worst customer service. I can't believe these people want to get paid $15 an hour. I hate McDonald's. I'll never go back. And then the next day, about lunchtime, you get hungry again, and you see that golden arch, and you're right back through the drive-thru. And you realize that maybe you went a little too far. Or politically, somebody does something that you don't like, and you say, you know, that congressman or that senator, I can't believe I voted for him. I'll never do anything. And then when it's time to vote, there you are back at the ballot box again, casting your vote for the same person. Or here's an even worse one. Somebody does something that you don't like. All these people that call themselves Christians, they're just backstabbers and hypocrites and liars. All these idiots that say things that aren't true. And we go and we type that, and it's something that can't be taken back. We delete people that we're mad at. We specifically mention that. I know some people that'll say something mean about somebody and literally tag the person in that to make sure that they read it. Sometimes we say too much. How about this one? You know, a spouse is supposed to be supportive. And then everybody that sees your profile is going, well, there must be some trouble in their house. We are presenting a very public persona, and we're sharing things with the world sometimes that need to be kept private. The first thing we have to remember is don't say too much. Don't be angry. You know, they used to say if you were going to send a letter to somebody that you should write the first draft and throw it away. Well, maybe we should draft up our posts and read them before we hit the send button. We got to make sure that we don't say too much. And let me emphasize this. Don't say things that are overly personal for the rest of the world to consume. Because those things can be very, very damaging as you move down the road. Remember that verse, Proverbs 29:11. A fool vents all his feelings, but a wise man holds them back. Secondly, please remember that the cyber world, or whatever we want to call it, the social media realm, the world of technology, it's not real. It's not real. This week, I had a chance to do some pretty neat things this week. On Tuesday, Chase and I went up to Quentin Holloway's. I decided and got in my mind that I wanted to build some cornhole boards so that we could take them to camp this week and have a tournament. So I went up to Quentin's, and I had my design, and Quentin got a hold of it with Chase on the table saw, and I got a hold of the miter saw, and we built all our parts, and it was a lot of fun. We had a good afternoon, and we spent that time doing that, and so that was pretty neat. I had it. And my truck last weekend, we had an issue with the cooling system. So on Friday, David Green came up, and I went and bought the part, and David and I worked under the truck, and David was explaining some parts to me and showing me how things work. And I know a little bit about engines, but not as much as he. He's an ASE master technician, and we had fun working on the truck. Now, we also spilt washer fluid on the headlight and blew one of them up, but that's a different discussion for another day. But, I learned a lot. Yesterday, we went by the painter's house, and on those cornhole boards, Jennifer Painter is an expert wood burner, and she burned the camp logo into those boards for me, and she got to show me how it worked. That's fascinating to me. She told me last night that those wood burners get up to 800 degrees to burn into that. Man, that's fast. That's real stuff. That's real working with your hands with a saw and dealing with the engine of a car and working with fine details in wood and interacting with people and having relationships and putting food in our mouth. That's real. That's the real world. Typing on little buttons on a screen is not real. And I'm not saying that it's by design bad, but so many times I think we're missing out on the real world because we're so distracted in this one. In a survey that was done last year, 25% of people said that they had missed significant life events, like their children's first steps, because they were too busy playing on a phone. I saw this at Gilmer's graduation. The children are literally walking across in front of them graduating, and they're so busy trying to open Snapchat so they can get a video of it. Use your eyes. That's a picture that'll never go away. But we miss all these important events because we're too distracted by a world that's not real. So remember, it's not real. I want you to remember 3 words for me. Number 1 is comparing. Comparing. This is really bad. We go on Facebook or Twitter, or Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, and we see, man, they've got the perfect life. Those people over there, they go on vacation twice a month. They've got the perfect marriage. They're always saying, I love you, and posting all these sweet things. They're great. That person, their kids never get in trouble. They get straight A's in school, and they're the perfect kids, and they're always dressed right. Those people have got the perfect life. My life is just so miserable. I wish I could be like them. It's not real. We have no idea what goes on in people's homes. We only share the highlights. We only share the good things. We only share the exciting stuff that's going on. We don't share the fights that happen. We don't share the burnt meals and when the kids are crying. We don't share all those things because those aren't things that the world would want to see. We only share the good stuff. It's not real. When we want to compare our lives to somebody else, we're wasting time. What we need to do is be thankful for the blessings that God has given us in our lives. Let me say that. Instead of worrying about what other people are doing, we need to be thankful for the many blessings that God has given us in our lives. It's not real. So comparing. The second one is catfishing. Catfishing. A lot of you are thinking about a fishing pole. That's not what that is. Several years ago, there was a linebacker for Notre Dame named Manti Te'o. You may famously remember him because he got run over in the national championship game by one of Alabama's running backs. I think it was Derrick Henry literally left footprints on his jersey as he ran him over, literally. But he had a girlfriend, and he had a relationship with her for a long time, and she got sick, and Manti Te'o went on national TV and asked for prayers for his sick girlfriend that he later found out never existed. It was just some friends that had made up someone and found some pictures of a pretty girl, and they'd been talking to him online for years, pretending to be somebody that never really existed. There's all these memes going around Facebook. It's Manti Te'o like with his arm out, and it said a picture of Manti Te'o and his girlfriend. It's really mean, but that happens to a lot of people. Because here's what I want you to remember about catfishing. A lot of the people that we meet online are not who they say they are, and they're not what they say they are. We need to remember that. A lot of times we're maybe disgruntled at home and we get online and we talk to somebody else and we think, man, the grass is greener on the other side. My life with them would be wonderful. It's not always what they say it is. We need to once again be thankful for what we have. And the third C that I want you to remember as it relates to this not being real is coveting. It's really dangerous to covet somebody else's life. The car that they have or the house that they're moving into. And sometimes that's what happens to us and we get trapped in that. So comparing, catfishing, and coveting. Number 3, and this is a reference to what we talked about last week, remember to set boundaries. Remember to set boundaries. We live in a world now where adults are the aliens and children are the natives. I'm talking about digitally. Kids have grown up from a very young age and in school using smartphones and using tablets and using computers. And most of you grew up before that technology existed. Some of you grew up typing on a typewriter. Some of you grew up cranking the front of the car like this, but anyway. So it's very foreign to a lot of adults, but very familiar to kids. We had the fish fry, and I may have shared this with you, and Serenity Bingham sitting right here, and Serenity was playing with my phone because that was the only way I could get her to sit still for 5 minutes, but she was playing on my phone, and not only did she figure out my password, which is supposed to be locked, she had opened up the Snapchat app and was taking selfies. And she can do that as a kindergartner. How many of you could do that? If I gave you my phone right now, how many of you could figure out how to unlock it and get into an app and start sending messages to people? So here's a piece of advice I want to give you. If you're a parent and you don't know how to use it, your kids shouldn't have access to it either. And I know that's hard, and I know the kids are going to be really mad at me for saying that. But if your kids have access to something, learn how to use it. And here's the really important thing. Learn how to monitor it. Learn how to monitor it. I was up at a Blue Ridge baseball game several months ago, and Pat and Jill Holloway were there. They're not here. Brandon and his wife are here. But Jill showed me this app that she has on her phone, and Carla has showed it to me too. It's called Life 360. And you can put that on your child's phone, or in my case, Carla's going to put it on my phone so she can track me. But you can track this. You can track your child wherever they go. It tells you if they use their phone while they're driving, how fast they were going when they were driving, where they stopped, how long they stopped there. You can track their movements. And there are lots of apps like that. There are apps where any picture that your child takes on their phone, you can see it. It goes to your phone as well. If you don't know how to use it and monitor it, our children shouldn't have access to it either. That's a boundary that we have to set. Because while they may be smarter as it relates to using technology, you as the adult are smarter when it relates to making good decisions about life. Hopefully. We have to set those boundaries. So we beat up on the kids for a few minutes. How about adults? How about husbands and wives setting boundaries for each other as it relates to technology and social media? Do you know what your spouse is doing on the computer? Do you know what websites they visit? You know what apps they have on their phone? Do you know who they talk to? Do you know who their best friends are? Do you know who messages them? Do you know what the conversations are like? I'd be willing to bet if you went and today you told your partner, hey, let's open up your emails so I can check out your emails. Hey, let me go back and look at your Facebook messages so I can see who you've been talking to. Let me read your DMs so I can see who's been sliding up in there. Know how you say that? Sliding up in? Anyway. How many of you would be horrified to let your spouse see who you've been talking to and what you've been saying? And we say things like, hey, if you trust me, you wouldn't need to go. You should trust me. I can't. No. We need to have boundaries. We need to have complete openness and honesty with each other as it pertains to the way that we deal with those things. So we need to set boundaries, both children and adults. We need to have those boundaries with each other. In addition to that, we need to set boundaries on when and how long technology is there. I have a really bad habit, and I'll admit this to you. And a lot of this, let me tell you, is to me, because I struggle with technology too. And I'll tell on Butch and Chase. Chase and I went to lunch on Friday to celebrate his birthday, and we were sitting there waiting on our food at Okinawa, and he was on his phone looking at the Babylon Bee, and I was texting and playing on my phone, and I just kind of looked for a second. I said, here we are. I'm preaching this lesson on Sunday, and I'm just as guilty as the people I'm going to be talking to. And you can't go anywhere with Butch without his phone ringing at least 72 times. Susan's amening quietly right now. Because people have a great demand on our time as preachers, and that just goes with the territory. So what we have to do, and I struggle with this from time to time, is we have to carve out time where we are unavailable to social media and to phone calls and to technology. I'm a very impatient person. When dinner is not there, we're at a restaurant, I get very fidgety if I don't have something in my hands. I need one of those little spinny things that people have now. So my fidget spinner is my phone, and I check social media, and I check the baseball scores, and I see and there's my wife sitting across the table, and I've barely made eye contact with her in the last 5 minutes. And that's not right. It shouldn't be that way. We need to carve out times where that's not a part of our lives. And that's something you have to decide for yourselves. All right, the final thing. Turn over to Psalm 90 with me, and we're going to conclude. Remember to take time. Remember to take time. Psalm 90 and verse 12. So teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. There's a app you can go to somewhere that says it'll tell you when you're going to die. It'll give you the day and what the cause is, sort of jokingly. But let me ask you this. What if you knew today the exact moment that you were going to die, and you could get on your watch or on your smartphone, ironically, a countdown that would tell you exactly how long you had left to live? That's the first thing we want to know when somebody gets sick, right? Well, doc, how long do I have? What if you knew down to the second and the minute and the hour and the day exactly how much time you had left? Would we do things differently? How much time would we be spending on social media? How much time would we spend in front of the computer if we knew exactly how much time we had left? We don't know exactly how long, but we do know that life is short. So is that going to change the way that we spend time? I want to share this poem with you. It says, time is the inexplicable raw material of everything. With it, all is possible. Without it, nothing. The supply of time is truly a daily miracle, and affair genuinely astonishing when someone examines it. You wake up in the morning and lo, your purse is magically filled with 24 hours of unmanufactured tissue of the universe of your life. It is yours. It is the most precious of possessions. No one can take it from you. It is not something that can be stolen, and no one receives either more or less than you receive. Moreover, you cannot draw on its future. It's impossible to get into debt. You can only waste the passing moment. You cannot waste tomorrow. It is already kept for you. You cannot waste the next hour. It is kept for you as well. You have to live on this 24 hours of daily time. Out of it, you have to spend health, pleasure, money, content, respect, and the evolution of your immortal soul. Its right use, its most effective use, is a matter of the highest urgency and of the most thrilling actuality. All depends on that. Your happiness, the elusive prize that you're clutching for, my friends, depends on time. If one cannot arrange that an income of 24 hours a day shall exactly cover all proper items of expenditure, one does muddle one's whole life indefinitely. We shall never have any more time. We have and have always had all the time that there is. Think about that. We have the same amount of time every day. What's most important to us? Hopefully it's our families. This series, Families in Crisis, that we've been talking about. We've all expressed, or we wouldn't be here, a desire to have a better family life. So what are we doing to make it happen? We got to remember these things. And here's what I want us to remember, is no matter what mistake we've made in the past, God's grace in sending his son has allowed that sin to be forgiven. So in that vein, we offer an invitation like we do every week. What's the situation of your heart this morning? Something touched you that was said? Or even more dangerously, has nothing touched you at all? Is your heart so hard that you hadn't even thought about it? Are you currently engaged in an online affair or an online temptation or struggle that's causing separation and withdrawal in your household? Whatever the case may be, maybe you just want prayers for strength and guidance and wisdom. Whatever you need, we're here to help you and to pray for you and to help you be who you want to be. This morning, if you're not a Christian, the baptistry's prepared. There's dry towels. There are gowns to wear. All it takes is you making the decision that you want to live for God and make Jesus the Lord of your life. If you want to make that decision and become a Christian this morning, that opportunity is there for you. Whatever your need may be, come as we sing the invitation song.
That are nobler, these have allured my son. I will hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to I am resolved to go to the Savior, leaving my sin and strife. He is the true one, He is the just one, He hath the words of life. I will hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to thee. I am resolved to enter the kingdom, leaving the paths of sin. Friends may oppose me, foes may beset me, still will I enter in. I will hasten to him, hasten so